Hi, everybody. It is always an honor to say yes to Carrie. And anybody that is doing the work you are doing, we need you, we want you, and we need to support you and energize you. How many of you are from Toronto? Ooh, yeah. Okay, so I don't know how you feel about hockey, but last night was a bit... Thank you. You know what I'm talking about here. 1967, people. It was 1967. So I got really excited about the topic that we were talking about, but I thought I would give you a speech about the game that we are in. We are in a policy playoffs, right? This is like really high stakes stuff. First time in 50 years we've been here. And I want to talk to you about what the policy playoffs mean, how equity and inclusion in early learning and childcare could help us win the game of life. It is a game in 3 periods. We have just had the face-off, and after 50 years of asking for it, we got ourselves a national childcare program. It is a reality in Canada. Game on. But like any game, there are opposing teams, and they are vying for the win. One team is in this room. It is shooting for the gold. It is shooting for the gold in economic development and human development. That means bringing everybody along, leaving nobody behind. But your opposing team is looking for money for nothing and your kids for free. Okay, the kids aren't free. They're $10 a day to take care of them. And actually, it's not money for nothing. It is money for profit, which is actually the worst kind of nothing, because it's the kind of nothing that ensures there's more losers than winners. It ensures we leave more people behind. And only one of these 2 teams are going to win. I want you to win, okay? So we are going to talk about which team is going to win and what is going on and how you're going to win. Because this game has got 3 periods. 3 of them, just like a hockey game. Period 1 was the beginning. Period 2 is the middle. Period 3, that's where we're at now. Period 3, we have not started playing yet. We have won, Team Gold has won, period 1. It has won it on evidence and common sense. And let me just jog your memory about how period 1 unfolded. Back in March of 2020, I coined the term she-cession. There's a long story about how that happened. It wasn't really my invention. I just added a she instead of a he at the beginning of something that the New York Times did. But it was the first time in history that more women were left out of the economy in a deliberate way for the good of us all to contain the contagion. Now, most recessions are he-cessions. About 95 to 97% of the jobs lost in any typical Canadian recession are lost by men first, and then women join them. But what happened this time is 65% of the jobs lost in the opening months of the recession were done by women, lost to women because they were non-essential jobs. They were people-facing jobs. They were non-essential retail and personal services and hospitality. And yes, the boys caught up. But the first to take it on the chin were women. So that summer, I invented a jingle, a summer hit. No recovery without a she-covery. No she-covery without childcare. Sing it with me. No recovery without a she-covery. No she-covery without childcare. And it was a hit. Actually, it was a summer hit. And the first self-declared government, feminist government of Canada sang along with me, sang along with all of us, sang along with you. They saw very clearly the link between economic performance and women's ability to work, while they were also taking care of their children because the schools were closed or the child cares were closed. So it was pretty obvious what the problem was and what the solution was. And the feds actually acted. Now, I want you to know, for years, they did not act. This same self-declared feminist government, they had a fiscal reason now, though. They embraced the fiscal reason. The fiscal reason was based on 30 years or more of data, because they could see that subsidized childcare in Quebec paid for itself, literally. In the year you subsidized the care, you got more money back in terms of additional personal income taxes because more people could work more. And those people were women. But the data also show that when you don't prioritize early learning in early learning and childcare, when you create a publicly subsidized babysitting service where you don't care about the quality, you are literally leaving money on the table. Since the 1980s, governments of every single political stripe have prioritized growing the economy. Early learning and childcare will grow the economy for you. It'll do it today and it'll do it tomorrow, but you have to do it right for that to happen. Because if you're not doing it right, you are going to leave money on the table, and doing it right means shooting where the puck is going, not where it's been. And it's going someplace new. And it's going someplace new very fast. You've noticed it, right? We are dealing with the most widespread labor shortages we have seen since when? Since the 1950s. Half a century ago was the last time we saw anything like this. And it is happening not just in Toronto, not just in Ontario, not just in Canada, but anywhere in the world where there was a baby boom after the Second World War. Fertility rates in the same intervening decades have been dropping like a stone, and the pandemic is helping them drop even faster, which means because of soaring housing costs and because of the pandemic, people aren't getting jiggy anymore, and even when they do, they're not having kids. Okay, it's too expensive. They're afraid they cannot afford children. And that's actually a legitimate fear. These people mean that continually, going forward, we will have, for the next couple of decades, more people exiting the labor market than entering it. The only way that gets offset is by immigration, but we're all competing for immigration, and we're not competing for immigration, really. What we're competing for is cheap foreign labor, so that's why they're coming in as temporary foreign workers. It is a horror show, and we will talk about that later, maybe. But we are just beginning this period. We have been through 40 years lived experience only of labor surpluses as far as the eye could see because of people like me, boomers. Not only were we the largest cohort to be born and then move into the labor market in the 60s and 70s, but the girls thought they were just as good as the boys. So we had a double extra large cohort, and then we had 2 back-to-back recessions. Labor surpluses for as far as the eye could see. Workers were a dime a dozen. Employers could devalue them, particularly the workers that do your kind of work. But now we are moving into a period where you can't find enough workers. And that should be changing your value as well as everybody else. In fact, your value more than anybody else. I have lost track. Oh yes, here we are. Because we are going to need all hands on deck. Enter, mostly, the ladies. I excuse myself for the men that are in this room. I really appreciate that you are here as allies, as workers, and as caregivers. But the story really on labor shortage is squeezing more out of that lemon called women, getting more of them to work and getting more of them to work longer hours, moving from part-time to full-time employment. Guess what is happening? It is happening. We are seeing record rates of women's employment rates and hours of work for women with preschool children. And we are doing it not necessarily because of childcare, I'll get to that in a second, but while we're doing that today for a whole host of reasons, in a few years it's not going to be about the women. In a few years it's about the kids that we are or are not investing in right now, right? 10 years, 15 years, we've got a bit of runway, but if we don't do this right, we are at even a worse pickle in a few years. And in the sense of reaping what we sow, also in the sense of honoring and maybe doing a little homage to the Leafs win last night, I will shamelessly use the analogy of a hat trick in what we could be doing to describe the potential of what we could be doing and how we could have a win-win-win for one of the biggest challenges of the early 21st century, not enough workers. Now stay with me. Yes, early learning and childcare is the hat trick of public policy in 2023. We shoot and we score goal 1 for a Canada-wide early learning and childcare strategy. Way to go! We get more people. We help more people get a job. We add hours of work. We see GDP go up. We see public revenues go up even more than public expenditures. We remove bottlenecks in labor supply. We increase the ability to deploy the human capital that so many individuals individuals have invested so much time and money in their own post-secondary education. That's why it pays for itself, wherever you bring it in. I wish I had an announcer's voice. I'm losing my voice. Anyway, again, we shoot and we score. We scored goal number 2. Yes, we expanded the care economy. But did we create great new jobs? Because listen, there are 2 ways of expanding economy: crappy jobs or good jobs. And this is public money. So we could be using public money to expand the part of the economy that we all rely on. That by offering decent work, living wages, benefits, pensions, some control over hours, enough workers, built-in skills development, that's what decent work looks like. By doing that, we could be expanding the middle class. And I'm not kidding, that isn't like a fancy free suggestion. Did you know the care economy, which is healthcare, social assistance, and education, accounts for 12.6% of GDP. It is double the share that oil and gas offers. It is bigger than manufacturing. We do more to propel the economy through the care economy than all the things we talk about, innovation and exports and all those things. It accounts for 21% of all jobs. There is no sector of the economy that offers 1 in 5 jobs. It could literally be the equivalent of what manufacturing was in the middle of the 20th century, right? There were some shitty jobs, but there were a lot of good jobs. They were unionized, they were middle-class jobs, they paid well, they supported a family. If we treated these jobs in the care economy as worth valuing, as being the decent jobs, we could be building the spine of the middle class as we fund the need to provide early learning and education and get those women back to work. The third goal, which is in our playbook, but our teams are not lined up. We know how to do this, but we're not quite ready. We could not only create more decent jobs and optimize people's contribution to the economy, we could maximize human potential of the next generation. Early learning, as all of you know, but as too many of the people that fund you do not know, early learning is not babysitting. It is creating new human beings. It isn't just about creating the workforce of the future. It's creating the society of the future. It's learning how to be human, and it's learning how to learn. You have to learn how to do that. You have all learned how to do that, and we all know that the first 5 years are incredibly important. But if we don't do this part of it right, and we are not at the moment, if we don't do this part of it right, we are literally leaving money on the table, and I'm speaking as an economist here. And that's something that most politicians don't want to do. So it can be a win-win-win, but that's not how second period is unfolding. In too many places, particularly Ontario and Alberta, we are actively squandering the federal dollars that we received and actively squandering the human potential we could be developing. We are leaving more people behind, even as we spend more money. Ontario is actually okay paying policemen 6 figures for high school education. But when it comes to women who have sunk 2 years or more and thousands of their own dollars learning how to help people become their best selves, we pay them less than garbage collectors in Ontario. Check out the Indeed job board. Actually, if you are looking for how much a registered ECE makes in this province, and you also look up the term pet groomer, pet groomers sometimes make more than registered early childhood educators, for heaven's sake. I mean, yeah, a lot of the same noise, but a lot less responsibility. We keep talking about the need for more training as if that's why we have a labor shortage. But once we have people that have training, we don't pay them for the training that they got. This is where you have to say boo. Right. This is where you have to say shame. Because this is a shamefully deliberate strategy. Keep a lid on the pay of publicly funded workers in childcare, elder care, and healthcare, so that for-profit providers in the private sector increasingly look attractive as places to go work and places for people with a little bit of extra cash to put their kids in because they actually are staffed up. Okay, that is appalling. And it is growing inequality among parents. It is growing inequality among children. and it is growing inequality among workers, and it is doing it deliberately. This is public policy. We voted for these people to do this. And it is heading into a terrible math. Women's employment rates are at record highs, particularly those with young kids. Huge growth in the last few months. But it's not because we have more licensed high-quality care. In fact, the only solution to this quandary is that we are warehousing, not nurturing, a growing percent of our most precious future resource, those kids we are producing in ever-diminishing numbers. Deep into period 2, we are spending more and getting less, and we are paying for it in way after way after way. When the federal government finally committed to spending our money, your money and my money, not theirs, to improve early learning and childcare, and they rejected that several times. This feminist government rejected the idea of doing it for many years at the beginning of this administration. They finally plunked down $30 billion over 5 years. Sound like a lot? Yeah, a lot of coin. That's the reason it was resisted by even this same administration that self-declared itself as Canada's first feminist government. But $30 billion over 5 years pales in comparison to the other things they are doing. Did you know we spend almost $30 billion a year federally on giving parents cash through the child benefit? Did you know, that's a year, not over 5 years. Did you know we spend almost twice that much, almost $60 billion to provide cash benefits for the elderly through old age security? Did you know? Wait for it. I had to. You do too. Did you know we are spending $80 billion in 1 year, that we spent $80 billion in 1 year alone for the Canada Employment Wage Subsidy? So we've helped parents, we've helped the elderly, and we've helped, yes, employers. I'm not even talking about CERB, I'm just talking about the wage subsidy. So it's a lot of money, $30 billion over 5 years, but it's not the end of the world, and it's not as much as you think, and it's not enough for the job we need to do. And it is not buying what we thought it would buy. Yes, some parents have seen their childcare costs cut in half. That was the goal, wasn't it? And it's actually, the goal is to get it down to $10. But only 29% of parents with preschool kids have a space in licensed care. And not all of those licensed care spaces have signed up to help parents in this province, partly because of an incredibly effective lobby. That's the other team you're playing against. The plan has always focused on expanding the number of parents who can access the benefit. But far from expanding licensed places, we are seeing fewer spaces that can operate, fewer people to deploy the capacity we have because of what? Labor shortages. And why do we have labor shortages? Can't hear you. Terrible wages is the answer. Things are getting really bad. You know it better than I do, but it's hard to maintain spaces, let alone expand them, when you cannot keep your workers because wages are so low they can go someplace else and get more. The YMCA. Do we have anybody from the Y here? Okay, so you know that in Ontario, you are currently 700 people short of pre-pandemic levels, much less expanding. Did you know, the rest of you, that of the 35,000 spaces the YMCA offers, the biggest nonprofit provider in this country, it is currently operating 16,000 spaces because they cannot staff the rest. So we've got space. Space isn't the problem. Workers are. We have playrooms that are empty because we have no caregivers. We can do better. The government of Ontario could do better because it itself has said it's going to be 8,500 workers short by 2026. Okay, that is their plan? Is their plan to be short? Because we do not have a recruitment strategy. We have a training strategy. We are spending money on training people who are then leaving the field because they are paid so poorly. Did I mention that pay was poor in the sector? Did you know that $19 an hour is an improvement over what they got before? And it again is federal money, it's not provincial money. There are other provinces that pay $19, but BC got up to $19 by adding something like $4. Like, they actually added a lot of money. But it's a problem everywhere, don't get me wrong, because we are paying truck drivers more than we are paying childcare workers because of labor shortages. The reason why wages are so low is because governments are deliberately keeping a lid on it because taxpayers don't want to pay more. So we're counting on free money falling from the feds to be able to pay people more, but it's not even being used for that. And that's, like, we are even having trouble keeping people after Ontario pulls the Alberta joke, which is, oh, we're not going to ask you for as much qualifications. You don't have to have qualifications. You don't actually have to be trained. We just need a body in there. And there's still no plan to improve workforce recruitment and retention. Now, as I said, not all jurisdictions are trampling on the intention of the Canada-wide early learning and childcare bilateral agreements that have been signed by both parties, like Ontario and Alberta is. Access is expanding to licensed childcare in some Atlantic provinces where jurisdictions are adding spaces, often in schools. They are using existing infrastructure, our schools, which people can get to from wherever they live, because that's how we built our schools, and expanding access by educating down to full-day kindergarten and adding before and after school day care to get us to a broader and broader younger target group that is being provided with public services in a publicly funded way that is regulated and high quality, like our education system. Quebec is also expanding the number of centres de petits enfants, which is their jewel in the crown. That was absolutely the #1 place that everybody wanted to go to, and there weren't enough of them, and they are building more of those. So excellent that they are moving in that direction. That does create better jobs, better care, because the conditions of work are the conditions of care. And so we are doing a good job in some places. We need to scale those things up. And it is these public and nonprofit expansions that are at the heart of the intent of the bilateral deals. And we have to get back to that. They're better for kids, they're better for parents, and they value the people who are providing the care for our youngest learners as if they were educators, not babysitters. But so far, these deals have been implemented as if we are deploying a Zeller's marketing scheme, because the lowest price is the law. $10 a day has been the core of the retail political message at the federal and the provincial level. $10 a day, cheap as you can get. Can't get it much cheaper, can we? Who is getting $10 a day care? Well, the people who already had it and had access to licensed care. And who are they, by and large? Well, mostly middle class, upper middle class. Certainly, they don't live in childcare deserts. Certainly, they are not lower income households, or people that have to work long shifts, or people that have kids with special needs, or people that cannot speak our first or second official languages, or people who are indigenous and trying to live into their culture and bring it alive again. There are so many people that are not getting the care that they need. So we're taking care of the people that were already taken care of and actually didn't need help in being taken care of. And that has been our retail politics. So given everything that's happened since the pandemic, we are guaranteeing through this policy more inequality in lived experience and in financial hardship. The conditions of work are the conditions of care, as Professor Pat Armstrong has said for decades about long-term care. It's the same thing in early learning and childcare. And there is some improvement in wages in almost every province because of federal money. But the amount is just plain insulting. After what you guys have done to invest your own time and money, and after the way your paychecks have been scorched in the last year by a 40-year high in inflation. We are talking about a pay raise of $1 an hour, people, to $19 an hour in Ontario. And that's not for the assistants. That's only for the trained workers, the registered ECEs, right? So even more inequality for workers. Then the for-profits are preaching a different type of inequality. For them too. You know, it's the Olympics of victimization. I'm being left out of this deal. It's time for them to take place on the podium on the Olympics of victimization, because they are lobbying for changes on what kind of share of the money they get. They want to change in the funding formula. They don't even just want more money. They want to change the funding formula. Let's be clear why. A lot of the individual for-profit providers across this country to date have been ma and pa operations. Okay, they're ma operations. They're small people who have, in some cases, bought a facility, which is their retirement plan. when they finish their career, because there's no pensions in this field, if they sell their plant, their physical plant, that provides them with their retirement. Guess who noticed? Private equity did. Private equity is moving into long-term care, health care, and child care. It's moving into the into the care economy like a dirty sock, and it's not because they want to provide care. It's because they want to get the real estate. And then they create these holding companies where one part of the company leases at exorbitant rents to the part that they are using to manage the care. We have to ring fence public money. We have to put a ring fence around how public money is being used to finance shareholder gain and profits in real estate. Okay. Oh, and make no mistake that a lot of the ma operators are sitting on very valuable real estate because they precisely go to the places where there is money for their childcare. So they're in pretty good neighborhoods. So this real estate is extremely valuable. It is not just, in where the childcare deserts are. It is precisely where the childcare deserts are not. So I did that. Okay. So the fact that we keep talking about labor shortages and training as being the problem without a recruitment and retention plan for the workforce means we will continue to have more child care spaces without people, more playrooms without caregivers or children. More people will sink time and money into training themselves and then realize, hey, I'm not valued at all. I can make more money as a pet groomer. What a waste of time and money, both public and private. And we haven't yet seen the plateau of employment rates of women with preschool-aged children. We've still got some ways to go before women look just like men, whether they have little kids or not. But that means these kids are going somewhere to be cared for. And if regulated childcare spaces aren't expanding, if that isn't where they're going, are we simply hardwiring more poor outcomes for the next generation using public money to do it? Look, if we don't look ahead, we are going to end up in the ditch. That's what happens, even with $30 billion more than we didn't have a couple of years ago, because money without a plan is just money. And that takes us to the third period, and practically the end of what I have to say to you. And the third period is always the one that decides who wins the game. It's time for everyone in this room to start making noise about the elements of the plan we need to avoid going into the ditch, more money or less. What is it? We know we start off with paying people better, right? We need to recruit and retain people. We need to put enforceable conditions and guardrails on how public funding gets used so it does not go to fund shareholder returns. We need to build on the public assets we already have in our communities and educate down wherever we can. And we need to expand first and put a priority on expanding in the areas where families have had the least access to decent service that helps them build the abilities of their children. Period 3 is coming up in just a bit. The provinces are starting to prepare for the renegotiation of phase 2 action plans. It's been 2 years. So the negotiations are beginning again. And it would be very surprising if there is zero new federal money as these plans go forward. The provinces certainly will be the provinces and territories will certainly be asking for it. And there's some leverage here because there's been some major failures to use the money in the first 2 years as intended. So we have an opportunity to play both parties off of one another, to do more with more. That combination is powerful leverage for you, for me, for the feds, and also for those shareholders I was mentioning. They haven't forgotten that they are in the game, and they are lobbying very hard. So we need to constrain the bad behavior, call it out, show it for what it is, and we need to scale up the good behavior. We need to do both of those things. I'm mixing sports analogies here, but it's the classic 1-2 punch. And so this involves you. How are you making your concerns known? How are you working together to make your concerns known and very audible to the people that make change, but also to the general public, to the parents that you serve, to the people who are going to school, to one another? It is important for us to get into our communities to make this story as real as it was during the pandemic. Team Gold, is kind of winning the game. The jury's kind of out, but there's still plenty of playtime to turn the score around. Our problems are totally fixable, not through legislation, but through public pressure and negotiation to show us where the money that we gave to do this thing went and how it bought the change we need. And the first change we need is to stop the hemorrhage of the workers as they leave the sector. The stench of the bleed is very straightforward. Increase workers' wages, benefits, and pensions commensurate to the training we are asking these people to do to develop our next generation. Value and respect what everybody in the sector is doing, actually, every day, every night. And you will see more people stay. And more people come back to the sector. Just ask Ontario's police officers. And when it comes to actually expanding the workforce, don't just speed up the entry of temporary foreign workers. Implement a human resource plan that covers a range of skills and offers continuous earn and learn opportunities. That's how we trained early generations of nurses in this country when we developed Medicare. Just ask any of them that are like in their 60s how it happened. I was just talking to an Atlantic nurse the other day who said, free tuition plus room and board in return for being in bed at 10 o'clock, which was kind of like maybe not always happening, but free tuition plus room and board. And the way the workday was set up is half day in class, half day on site. People were constantly spelling one another. You didn't get paid for your labor, but you got paid for credentials that you walked away with after 3 years that you could take anywhere. Why aren't we doing that in childcare? After 50 years of asking, national childcare is finally a reality in Canada. And the second period of this game has not gone terribly well. But the third period is coming up, and it is our chance to put the hat trick, the winning goal, in the net. It's a winning game plan, and we know how to do it. Let's go, Team Gold.